Hello future tech leaders, I am Sindhuja. Based on my own experience, I know that learning the right skills can shape our future. What if I say learning was as thrilled as the tech world itself? There we go. A cloud foundation, that's exactly what you will experience. From day one, you will be immersed in the interactive sessions and expert-led courses that covers most of the widely used technologies in the zone of data science to cloud computing, which brings more light to the life of a techie. I'm so excited to help you and unlock the true potential of a technology. Well, then why to wait? Let's see what it unfolds.
We started looking at number of options in terms of identity or security of these resources by using keywords. Using such tokens. And the last one where we stopped was making use of Azure Active Directory. If you look at your Azure Active Directory, we went to containers. Here you can say switch to Azure AD user account. This is one way of working with it. And once you do that, while you are accessing it through Generate SST, your account key will not be helpful. In that case, you need to use something called as user delegation key. This is a separate key which will allow you to. This is referred as delegation key. This is primarily meant for the user. Another way how we can make use of it is you can make use of role-based access control. And via role-based access control, we can specify which user will have what permissions on storage account. Here if you see, if you go to the role assignments or you go to here, it is grant permissions. These users that we are looking at, all these users are part of your Azure Active Directory. And here what we are doing is, we are giving permissions to those users. As they log in as that user, they will be able to perform actions on the storage account. These are two primary ways how Azure Active Directory can be used to access your blobs and resources within your storage account. Let's move ahead. Let's check for other resources in terms of storage security. When you are looking at Azure Storage, there are options available for protecting these resources by using virtual networks. Now, this is another key thing that everyone should understand. Once it comes to PaaS services, PaaS services are not direct. PaaS services does not mean that since they have a public URL, they will be accessible to anyone and everyone. Right. Though they have the public URL, you can protect them using SAS tokens. You can protect them by using no anonymous access or private access. Right. You can create a private link over here. Right. And in this context, when you're looking at virtual network, an important thing that we are doing is correlating these. We are correlating the PaaS services with infrastructure components. And that is an important aspect over here. Really what people feel is PaaS services are separate and SaaS services are. PaaS services are separate and infrastructure components are entirely different. and they are two different architectures. Now with this, what Microsoft is trying to do is, Microsoft is trying to correlate both these members together. Microsoft is trying to correlate both these members together. That is, infrastructure component, which is virtual network, can be associated with a Azure storage, which is a PaaS resource. And storage account is not the only one. There are lot of other services also, like Cosmos D, SQL, Evolve, Azure Active Directory instance, your website. There are plenty of members using which we can associate infrastructure components with your platform as a service components. While we are configuring this resource, this will be very, very important for solution. Organizations are looking for intranet solutions, or they don't want to have public endpoints for their services. In those scenarios, what we can do is we can leverage upon the PaaS resources. We can work with these members. When you are looking at the considerations over here, we create something called as network security groups. We can specify permissions or access permissions within a specific subnet only. That you may have a virtual machine in a given subnet, and I have a storage account there, and only these two members can communicate. Now, even if you look at on-premises environment where you have set up side-to-side connectivity, even in that scenario, this will make sense. Like I said, intranet-based resources. Any communication with your on-premises environment, even those things can be done using PaaS components. If you look at your virtual machine, communications, or your managed disks that you have, or your unmanaged disks, those don't have any imp on. The issue of this file, Firewall, and all these values that you see is only relevant for eyes. I'm not sure. Recently, Microsoft has been mentioning anywhere. Since I have been working on Azure for very, very long time, I know what is ISO 1. What are the changes in 2.0? And now what you have is, if look at the default network access rules over here. You can specify what actions you want to perform, whether you want to allow any action, you want to deny actions. Right? These are by default your access rules, which is there. And when you are creating your firewall and virtual network settings, you can specify even a group of IP addresses from which you want to allow or deny access. If you want to create any kind of exceptions, saying that these are the other network ranges or IP ranges which I want to exclude, or I want to do exceptions. Even for Azure services, you can make exceptions for that. Now to help us work with these members, let me show you a quick demo over here of the steps which is being mentioned. Once you go to your Azure portal, since we want to check this using a virtual network and give restrictions for that, we will need to create the virtual network first. Let's specify details over here. That is whatever location you want. Just give me a moment. Let me verify. What is the location of the current storage account? Southeast Asia. Let's go ahead. What is the range of IP addresses that you want? Whatever subnet you want to create. Say for example, let me give it name as data subnet. Now, when you are creating these subnets over here, you need to specify the service endpoints. Right. And this will help you communicate with respective resources. This is another way which I was mentioning about. Establishing communication with past resources. In our case, our scenario. You would want to make use of integration with Microsoft Storage account. Let's select that resource here. Click on Save. In terms of security, I would want to leave this as it is. And let's click on Create. The service endpoint creation. That we are doing right now. Sometimes it takes slightly longer. Now, if you don't do this over here, if you don't create a service endpoint here, you would have to create a service endpoint when you are doing the association with your storage account. Right? Here, once you go to storage account, in this section under the settings section, let's go to networking. Now here what we are saying is, do you want this resource to be accessible to our networks or to select your networks? If you look at the options available here, in my case, I already have existing virtual network. With my name. And I also have something called as data subnet. Since I have added a service endpoint, it's not showing that message here. Otherwise, it will show a message that you need to add a service endpoint. And I will do it now. Here, what we have done is, we have said that this storage account will be accessible on machines or resources within this subnet. You see, in next set of sections, you can add a firewall range as well. Whether my machine should be allowed to access or not. That's an exception that we are making. Let me uncheck this for now. Let me save this. And let's see the impact of this. If you go to containers over here, Earlier, what I was able to do is, I was able to go inside the container, change it from access keys to Azure Active Directory based authentication. Now this option right now, if you see, is not authorized. Because now it says you will have to make sure that whoever is performing this action, whoever is trying to access this content, the user has to be part of the subnet which is being mentioned over here. I have saved this. And I have only one storage account. Maybe refresh issues. Here, if you see, this is the significance of applying the network rules over here. I can go back to networking once again. And within networking, I can specify exception for my client IP address as well. Depending upon which users you want to allow or what exceptions you want to create over here. You can do that. If you want to allow, say, Synapse workspaces to communicate with the resource or specific services, you want to allow communications, you can do that. Let me try this once again. Can you see this? Since I have made exception for myself, for my IP address, I have been able to see this information over here. This is how you can go ahead and protect your resource and make sure that it is available only within a given subnet. Let's move further. Set terms of management of storage. Here what we have to do. Right now, what we have done is we have got the storage account created. We have seen how do you create containers over here. How do you upload files? By using the Azure portal. Is that all? Is that all that we want to do over here? Once it comes to storage account, is it just meant for one or two files? It's not. Because here, when we are looking at the capabilities of storage account, I can go and upload more than 5 petabytes of data over here, which will involve number of HT files, which will involve number of other content that we have. Are we going to upload this using the browser? Isn't there any other way of doing this? If you look at the other use cases of storage account, once it comes to data migration, moving resources from on-premises to Azure environment, that's where we can make use of storage account. If you look at your on-premises environment where you have virtual machine images, where you have number of VHD files, number of backed up information, which can at times go to TVs, all that information has to be moved to, can be moved to Azure environment, Azure storage. And here, you have to pay as per the amount of data which is being stored and other factors that we discussed in the last session. Along with this, you can put your contents over here, your video files, audio files, whatever application contents you want. That information can be stored over here on the storage account. I can have data backup like I mentioned earlier. Right. I can take web application backup, code backup, data backups, whatever backup information and recovery details one would need at a specific point in time. All that information can be stored onto storage account. One of the important services that you will see over here to push large amount of contents on or retrieve large amount of contents from Azure. You have something called as import-export service. As part of import-export service, this is actually involves physical intervention as well. What you do is you create a list of data locally, saying that this is a content which I want to move to Azure. And using that information, you create a job over here. Right. Now this job creation will be on the Azure portal. Parallelly, what you need also to do is, you need to copy all these contents onto a disk. Right. Once you have copied that details on the disk, you need to protect it by using a BitLocker or any encryption key that you would want. Even if that disk is not reached or there is some problem there, you still don't lose any information because nobody else can decrypt that data. Once you have interpreted information, you need to use a courier service which will help you transfer all these contents to nearest Microsoft data center. Now, once that data is being received from Azure data center, then you'll have your next set of steps over here, which is copying that contents to your specific account, your account. Now, once that part is being done, right, you can receive or you can see all that information over here. Once this process is being done, you'll be able to track how the entire information is happening, right? And what Microsoft will do is Microsoft will send you the disk back, right? But you'll be able to see all that information in your Azure storage account. This will be your process of once it comes to the Azure. If I can show you some of the details. I don't have the physical data disks over here or physical data box over here on which I can copy the contents. Right. Import into Azure or export from Azure. Say for example, if you want to discontinue or you don't want to continue with your Azure environment, you want to move all that data into your on-premises environment, or you want to move all that data onto continue with your on-premises environment. Or another decision you might want to take is take a backup of Azure in your on-premises environment. Right. Whatever might be the reason. In that case, you can export from Azure. In my case, I'm going for import into Azure. If you see a journal file over here, this journal file will have all the information in terms of which files, which folders you have selected for importing. And all this information that we have captured needs to be copied onto a data box or onto a physical drive. And once you have copied that, you have to upload that journal file over here in which region you want to import. Right. All this information we'll have to create it as part of the service. Which storage account you want to use over here? It gives an error saying that your storage account right now is protected. You have to remove that rules from here. We can select it. Then you can go to the shipping section. And shipping section, this is where you have to specify the courier details. It is FedEx Blue.UPS. All this information you need to mention over here. Once these details are being mentioned, what it does is it initiates a ticket with Microsoft. It also initiates communication with the respective courier service provider, who will take that disk to the nearest Microsoft data center and help you copy that contents. Opposite process, if you see over here, is in terms of export. You are exporting information. You have to select what is. If you see this diagram here, you say export data. Your job is to. Your task over here is to create a job on the Azure portal. Right. What you'll do? You'll have over here is, you'll have to send a blank disk to Microsoft. Now what they will do is they will copy all that data on that disk. And once you receive it and once they are copying their data, you can mention what is the encryption key that you would want. Once you have mentioned the encryption key, they will put all that encrypted data using that key. Put all that data into the disk and ship it back to you. Once you receive those disks, now you can copy that contents within your on-premises environment and unlock these disks using the key that we have used. In terms of, if you see the scenarios over here, whenever you have more than say 50 to 100 TB rough, that kind of scenarios where you can go for export jobs. If you have say around in TB of 5 TB after, in those scenarios, you can try out for easy or using something, using your side-to-side connectivity. That will be cheaper as in context of your import-export job. And secondly, it also depends upon, do you have a nearest Microsoft Air Center? If yes, this will make sense for you. It is pretty far away. That becomes even more difficult because the chances of losing the data is more. If you look at the next, in the import job, like, do we have to share them the BitLocker keys? If we have, why do you have to share them? No, when you have to use BitLocker keys but not share with them. When they're copying it to Azure, like to the cloud, like are they? How do they are going to do? You just copy the files then. What are the contents you have? See, once you see the disks, they will use BitLocker. Copy the data. Open that files and copy the data. Or even if they copy the data as it is on Azure environment, you will be still able to use a BitLocker to decrypt that. The decryption key is with you. Decryption key you don't have to share with them. To recall, we discussed about key vault, right? That key vault and the keys is owned by you, which is used for data encryption. Because maybe I'm like a little confused like how the BitLocker works in my laptop and if I can connect to any of the external disks like it asks us to. Encrypt that with the BitLocker. Got? If you take that BitLocker external drive to a different laptop, again ask for the code, right? That's what. I'm a little confused actually here. I get your point. In that case, you'll have to share your BitLocker key with them. But in that scenario, you have to maintain two keys. One will be BitLocker, which will allow them to connect to it. Your data encryption key. What is important for us is we should allow them to copy that data, right? But in an encrypted format. I got it now. Thank you. Now, second thing which I was mentioning was easy. As far as easy copy is concerned, you can copy large amount of contents from your on-premises environment to Azure environment without having to have things like site-to-site setup or site-to-site connectivity between your on-premises environment and Azure. This will use web-based resources behind the scene to copy all these contents. You can make use of it. There are a number of pre-existing templates or formats that one can use over here. If I go to the Cloud Shell over here, as for a part of Cloud Shell, you can go to PowerShell. And within PowerShell, you can just check for easy copy. You can go to the Cloud Shell. You will be able to see number of templates over here. Templates command line arguments. And each command line argument specifies what are the examples. If you look at easy copy, there are pre-existing commands over here. You can see the command line. And here you can see the series of examples being given. What is the mechanism of copying your on-premises data to your Azure container? Any specific blobs or containers you want to copy that content. You will see examples with SS tokens, without SS tokens. You will be able to see plenty of details over here. And plenty of examples, and some of the examples also are how do you copy from one environment or one resource to one storage account or one containers into second set of containers. Copy content from Amazon, Microsoft Azure. You will see a lot of examples over here. Now before we proceed further, let's take up an example for on-premises environment to Azure container. Let me use this template over here. What I'll do is I'll first put this on the one node. I can create resource accordingly. Now first thing to do is this as copy has to be a tool which is supposed to be installed on your system. In my case, I don't have that over here. What I can do is upload a file here. I have uploaded a file over here. And to verify this, right, this is the file which I have uploaded. This is a path, right? And where do I want to copy this? If I go back to storage account, I can't copy this in the existing storage account. Because just at store I have specify the network restrictions over here. What I will do is use this member over here. Add a container. Let's click on create. Let me generate a SAS token for it. Generate the SAS token. Let's go to shared access signature. What I can do is I can mention the entire detail. You always says token. Now one thing which is missing over here is the name of the container. I have to mention that. Which is test container. I want to copy this into the test container. Using the given. What I've done is I have modified it based on my environment. What are the details which I have over here in terms of test container? Just give me a moment. Let me try this once again. It should take a single parameter. Now if you see, moved all the contents from my Cloud Shell machine. It has moved the contents from my Cloud Shell machine to the Azure storage account and specific to the container which I had mentioned earlier. Now, work with this. This act copy as a resource or act copy as a tool should be copied or installed. Copied and installed on your machine, on your local, where you have the data. Right. And from there, you should initiate this. One of the examples, scenarios which we generally do is, whenever we have large amount of data to be copied, instead of putting that onto P or HTTPS, which takes good amount of time, it becomes, and even if there is a slight glitch in the network or there's something problem over there, you're copying data, copying can stop. Some of those things can be averted or those things can be resolved by using is you copy as a tool. It keeps a track of what is the amount of data being copied, and if there is any problem in between, you can still work with that. Clear view. Now the next resource that you see is, this is what I was talking about as an architect. In which scenario, what resource or which tool should I use? Is there any, like history kind of, where we can see what was uploaded at what time and what was success and what failure or something like that? Inside, I am not sure on that. Let me check it once again. As part of Easy Copy, no, I'm talking in the portal. I thought you were saying about Easy Copy parameters. If you see what are the, you're not saying that way, right? No. Like tomorrow somebody comes and see like what was uploaded and whether they're all or something failed. They want to go back and see. In that case, anything that you do within Azure, all that information goes into activity log. Any task that is being performed, creation of a SaaS token or putting up a blob container, anything and everything that you do, everything is part of your activity log. And this information will be stored for next 3 months. Whatever actions and activities that you do, this information is being stored for next 3 months. If you want to get this content or you have to move out this content, you can push it to storage account or you can push it to log analytics. You can write queries saying, at this, from this time to this time, what were the activities being done? Which activities has been succeeded? Which activities have been failed? All this information can go in. Go to log analytics. When you are looking at large data sets, when you have a good amount of network bandwidth, no issue. You can go ahead with site-to-site connectivity. You can go ahead with express route connectivity. Right, that will help. But in cases where you have low network bandwidth, right, and you already have a lot of people, a lot of your team members who are working on it, in those scenarios, you can go ahead for export, right? Or you can use things like data box or data box disk, where you can copy these contents, which can go from terabytes to petabytes. And I can move this information from on-premises to Azure platform. Right. You also have options for Azure Data Box Gateway, but this also requires good bandwidth for you. What it will do is it will keep up tracking. It will keep tracking how much data is being transferred. In the first scenario, you will see these are hardware appliances or hardware resources. In second environment, you will see data box gateway or stackage. These are soft or easy copy. These are softwares are being installed. There's no hardware device involved. But these tools will have appropriate tracking mechanism. Tracking mechanism, how much of data is being uploaded. If there's any problem while data transfer, it can resume back from a specific point. Those things can be done using these softwares or the tools that we have. Third member you see is your import-export service. And you have something called stackage. What Microsoft is doing is extending their resources for on-premises environment by using edge solutions and using Azure Stack, which is local implementation. As an architect, what I see is earlier you had more higher percentage of systems and resources within on-premises, where Microsoft was promoting System Center. In today's scenario, Microsoft has stopped promoting System Center. They are promoting Azure Stack because in on-premises environment, the amount of data and applications have shrinked and there are very less number of them. In these scenarios, you can make use of Azure Stack and work with it. Now, before I start with this, let me stop. And finally, do not forget to like, share and subscribe to our channel.